I love the beat. I love the graphics. I love what we've got going here. You just got to reach up and grab a fistful of it and say, yes. Yeah, it's good. It is the 21st of December. We're sneaking up on Christmas. We're together here for a conversation, international coaches, and we're going to go around the loop. I just call them as I see them around the square here, and I think we may all see them differently. So you may not be prepared, but I'm going to jump to Shelley Ann to tell us who you are and what you do.
How did I know?
Good for you.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you're looking at it. My name is Shelly Ann Edwards Barron, and I'm a gratitude guide and habit coach from Trinidad and Tobago. And I am a firm believer that people over 40 really ought to be able to achieve their goals with that joyous and happy energy while they're achieving and while they're getting toward their goals. But that's not how it always happens. Most of us end up burning the candles at both ends. Sometimes we try to burn them in the middle too. I don't know, lots of fire, but there's a better way to do it. And for me, that better way begins with intentional gratitude. So, what I do is to teach my clients how to say it right, which is, making language and self talk empowering, how to say it loud, making gratitude tangible and active, and how to say it always, which is really developing that habit of gratitude. And that keystone habit of gratitude lays the foundation for other habits that help my clients achieve their goals without the extra stress and distress that makes them feel as if they could pull hair out and that kind of thing. So if gratitude is, it's kind of like a buzzword, but if you want to find out how to make gratitude intentional, you can check my YouTube channel, Getting It Done with Gratitude, where you'd get some, every Thursday I go live in the morning earlier with Getting It Done with Gratitude. It's a discussion with another colleague of mine. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Just look for Shelly and Edwards Barron and we can chat.
Awesome. Yeah, gratitude is so important, and it's a two way street too. We get gratitude, we give gratitude. It's awesome. Yeah,
It's
I
very
love it.
active.
I love it. Cass, go ahead.
Hi, I want to start off by saying happy winter solstice to everybody that's here with us on the 21st of December. My name is Cass J. Henry. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and I am a holistic life mentor. As a mentor, I'm interested in the bigger picture of what makes you you, the mind, the body, the spirit. I work with clients when they feel stuck. They're looking to overcome self doubt and manifest their dreams. They might be looking to make changes or start new habits or stop old ones, and I'm here to give a new, different perspective. I work with my clients both in person and virtually, and if you think this might be a good fit, go to catastrophe.com and click the button that says schedule now.
Absolutely, good stuff. Gerald, jump in.
I'm Gerald Alexander from Glasgow, Scotland, and I'm a self image consultant. And it's pretty much giving people a sense of direction to whatever success means to them. It's making people think about where they're going and pointing out how to make stepping stones in order to get there. That's pretty much what I do.
Excellent. Um, My name is Stephen B. Henry. If you want to Google me, be sure to include the B. You'll find me. My friends call me Steve, and you can too. I'm an experienced, multi niched creative, a digital content creator, an online presence consultant, a business success guide, and personal development mentor. And that's a mouthful, but I've got years of experience. When you get old like me, that tends to happen. And I have a lot to share. I work with men and women wanting to start or expand an online presence. I help them get unstuck in their personal and business lives and help them move forward on their own online journey of success. I'm a Canadian expat currently living in the US, and you can find me at stephenbhenry.com. Today's topic is activating affirmations. Affirmations are something that I've used for a long time in my life. actually, since I was in my late teens or early 20s. Um, I probably started with them earlier than that and didn't know they were affirmations at all. So it's been a long and eventful and interesting journey. And I'm going to share a few things this session about that. But first, let's see who else wants to jump in and start the topic on affirmations. Cass, you're smiling. You got something to share with us there.
Sure. Reiki says that energy is in all things, in all places, at all times. And it's about how we harness that energy that matters most. So, affirmations are a direct link to the subconscious, and the subconscious has a landline to energy. When we put affirmations to work for us, we are actively sourcing both our own energy and universal energy, or source, as I like to call it. So, it's really important when you're working with affirmations to get it right. For example, if you're struggling and you think, give me strength to carry on, then you're missing the focus of an affirmation. The active word there is give. Instead, we need to focus on the positive present tense of what we want. I am strong is a powerful affirmation. I actually, I was going to share in my first book, Catastrophe, the next chapter. It's a beginner's guide to self-discovery. I have a whole chapter in there on affirmations, and I have about 54 examples, I believe. Things like, I am enough. I achieve my goals. I take up space. So there's some examples there about working with that positive present tense.
Yeah, that is so powerful and so important, and it's where people miss a lot. Affirmations do not have to be long, cumbersome things. In fact, they probably shouldn't. If they are long and cumbersome, they're probably wrong. I take up space. I fill my space. Different ways of saying those kinds of things that are
Yeah.
so powerful and true. Shelley, Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, when you said that, I thought, excuse me, about the wording of it, because while the affirmations themselves, they need to be in present, sometimes we make statements that we struggle with. So we don't believe the statement is true, and the statement in and of itself may not be true, but because we're trying to be positive, we make statements like, and I found one when I was doing the research for this session. I am beautiful and everyone loves me. Now, the first part, I am beautiful, that is true. The second part, everyone loves me, probably not so much, because there are some people who will not. Not everyone will like you, not everyone will love you. And so if you're making a statement like that, because of that um, erroneous concept within it, your subconscious is going to struggle. So if you modify that statement to say, I am beautiful and I am loved, now that is true because you are loved. There are people who love you, and there will be people who will love you, people in the past who loved you. So that is factual, that is true, and that is something you can connect with. But to say that everyone loves you, that's putting yourself into trouble. So while being positive and present is key, also making statements that are true, that would be key as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Keeping them short tends to do that. And I think, as you look at what you just said there, I am loved or everyone loves me, as the very moment you start to extend it, you lose the truism of it. And another thing that I would recommend there from my own experience is don't conjoin affirmations. I am loved. I forget the first part of it. I'm beautiful.
I am beautiful. Yeah, I am
doesn't
beautiful.
doesn't not one I would normally use, but I would use them separately. I am beautiful. I am loved. Only putting the and in there doesn't hurt. Your subconscious mind will actually ignore that and treat them separately. But what it does is by adding that in, you start to extend them, and you give yourself permission to extend them, and you can get out of hand with them if you're not really focused and really understanding what affirmations are. Go ahead first, Gerald. I think I'll let you get in there because I see you kind of jumping at the. Go for it.
I'm just making me notes, like the micromanaging. You know, like what Shelly Ann was just saying there about like the affirmations and how they're correct, and then Steve, can he pretty much influence that with, no, that's the reason why they're supposed to be short? Because I think it's more so like about nudging your brain in a certain direction. You know, like that's why it's great to say your gratitudes first thing in the morning. I am grateful for, you know, because most people are reaching over and picking up their cell phone, you know, or their phone, you know, like to see what messages they got, and oh my God, I've got to get back to them, or I've got to go to work, what's traffic like today? Whereas if you nudge your brain, you know, like towards what am I grateful for, that's like, can you start it? Then I think it's pretty much leave it over, hand it over to your subconscious mind. That's why it is the subconscious mind, because it works without you really focusing on it. And then what Cass said as well, whereas where our energy goes, or where our focus goes, our energy flows. So it's pretty much giving yourself a sense of direction, and it's all with the words that we're saying. And affirmations are just one of the most powerful things that you can do. It's pretty much like casting a spell. That's why they call it the spelling. So the words that you're appointing yourself, what you want to happen, you're directing your life. And I recently read something about affirmations, saying them out loud and clear, is just so much more powerful. Because I tried it and I'm like, wow, it's actually like speaking to yourself. And how do I sound? Am I getting the message across? Because you've got to be getting the message across to yourself. And if you're not getting the message across to yourself, and what was it you had said something about, Shelly Ann? What was it about the subconscious? It'll come to me. But that's pretty much what I was making.
I think what I had said was that your subconscious will fight you.
Oh yes,
and
that's it.
It's not even necessarily a fight, because it wins, right? But it will be a struggle.
I actually wrote a blog about that today, like the affirmations, and it's pretty much like how like the example that you gave, your consciousness, if it doesn't believe it, it'll struggle with it, it'll find it hard. But it's all about repetition once again. It's all about making a habit of doing it, because eventually it will no longer win, because you're the captain. And if you just keep telling it, look, you're not going to do what you're told, because I don't need that information anymore. Maybe it was helpful to me in the past, but I don't want it anymore. Throw it overboard.
Well, I still think it wins. It'll just agree with you now, but it still wins.
Yeah. The subconscious is powerful and in control. And it is, as Cass said, your pipeline to the universal energy. And the interesting thing, I'm a bit of a scientist, along with being a coach and a philosopher, and some people think that's kind of a dichotomy. But I've been waiting for science to catch up, and it is now with quantum physics and the various things that are going on. We're starting to see that a lot of the things that were philosophical in the past, and maybe even a little bit woo-woo stuff that people weren't too sure of, is starting to be proven out in science as actually happening. And we now know unequivocally that everything is energy. All matter is energy, and the being in tune, everything vibrates, everything has its wavelengths. Cass and I were just talking before this session about light and perceiving light, and it's all wavelengths right through the whole spectrum of existence. And so we can tap into that. We vibrate, and we can tap into the other wavelengths. But the affirmations, what bothers me a lot about it is that it's one thing, we're talking about it here, and none of us are so professional in the discipline of affirmations, although we all use them in our lives and we embrace them and we understand them. But I've seen people out there, so-called coaches and gurus, that are teaching affirmations to other people, and they're teaching them wrong. And it's so sad to me when I see that, because I see people, I hit the bell. I see people going out and reacting and dealing with things incorrectly, but thinking they're helping themselves when in fact they're hurting themselves. And the subconscious mind, you want to understand. I was going to say you have to, and Cass wasn't here to hear me, but I said you want rather than have to. You want to understand the subconscious as it applies to affirmations, and you'll realize that the subconscious does not know opposites. It does not know right and wrong. It does not know good and bad. It does not make judgments on what's happening. It only knows to empower what you feed it, to do what you feed it. And so if you say, I don't want chaos in my life, and then you see chaos all around you and it gets worse and worse and worse, and you say, see, the subconscious mind doesn't work. Affirmations don't work. The law of attraction is garbage, because look at all the chaos I got when I asked not to have it. But the subconscious didn't understand don't want. It only understood chaos, and it gave you what you asked for. So
Yeah, and that goes back to, sorry for
yeah,
cutting
go
you.
ahead. No, go ahead.
That goes back to what Cass said, where your mind goes, your energy flows. And so while you're thinking about, okay, I don't want chaos, so I'm thinking about what I don't want, that is where your mind is. So you're not thinking about what you actually want, because you're thinking about what you don't want. And that therefore that's where the energy will flow. And so when it comes to wording, that is a big deal when it comes to affirmation. That makes or breaks the affirmation. That plus the consistency with repeating it. And I w- I came across another one that I thought very interesting. And I know, Stephen, you might have a bit to say about this because it deals with money. And the statement was, I am happily and joyfully receiving $20,000 a month from my business. And I read that and I thought, that ain't true. so so it has so many issues. There are so many issues with that statement. And one possible slight revision that to me would make a difference is, it is possible for me to receive $20,000 a month from my business, because sometimes we need to acknowledge that it's possible, and we need to convince ourselves that it is possible because we're doing the background work. We can also say, I'm the type of person who can receive $20,000 a month from my business. But I know when it comes to money in particular, Steve, that you have some thoughts about making those kinds of statements. And I know money affirmations and money mindset, that's a big thing, because who doesn't want more money? There are
Mhm.
lots and lots of people who are focusing on that kind of thing. But I really wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, you're absolutely right in what you just explained. And when we elaborate on our affirmations to make them as long and as involved as that, we tend to open the door to, fuzziness. We're not as precise as we should be. Um, I think it's enough to say I make money in my business. The subconscious will work towards making money in your business, and you'll get more than you probably thought. And I know myself, when I struggle with money, and yes, I do from time to time, and I actually start applying the affirmations simply, and looking at the things, thinking about the things. See, affirmations are not your thinking process. They are spoon feeding your subconscious. But what
Yeah.
you just talked about there, Shelley-Ann, is so powerful because your thinking process informs the spoon feeding that you're going to do to your subconscious. So where the subconscious may be, where the affirmation to the subconscious may be, I make money in my business. The thinking process of $20,000 a month, lots of money, moving ahead, making more next month than I am this month, all those thought processes that are not affirmations in and of themselves inform the subconscious as to what you really, really want. And the subconscious picks out from those things the positives. So you have to be careful not to be thinking negatives. I don't want a month like last month. Oh no, that'll give you a month like last month. So you really have to be doing it. So let the thinking process be the long-worded part of it, and let the affirmation be concise and precise. One of the things that I have seen many times, not just once, not one person doing it, but I've seen established coaches teaching this to other coaches who then teach it to their clients. And I've seen a couple of books written on it. And how can you not believe it if it's written in a book, right? So they will do the double whammy, I call it, on affirmations. I make money in my business. I'm not poor. Right? I am a happy person. I'm not sad. I move forward with my efforts. I don't look backwards. Whoa. Do you see what's happening there? Oh my goodness. And people are teaching that, and people are accepting that, and then applying that into what they're doing. At best, there's a cancellation and nothing happens.
You're pulling it through neutral is what I call that.
Yeah. And if you're lucky, that's all you'll get. But if you're unlucky, if luck has anything to do with it, you will.
There are places in your life where pulling it through neutral is something you want to do. Not necessarily with those kinds of affirmations. It sounds like they're not, that those types are looking for something more. But there are places in your life where we're just saying I am, or I breathe, or I'm safe. Those things are foundational security, and you may not be able to be a positive affirmation right at that moment in your life, especially things when it comes to working with your body and body love. You may not be able to jump from the negative space that you're at to that positive affirmation. So you do need to pull it through neutral. But with affirmations, you're really looking to, like Shelley-Ann said, to speak that truth into it.
Yeah.
And the thing, go ahead.
If you pull it through neutral, do that relatively quickly, and then get to the positive. Use that to get you to the positive. Don't live in neutral. That's the mistake we make. Yeah.
What does the term pull it through neutral mean?
For me, it just means that you're not being negative anymore, but you're not ready to be positive yet. You're in that sort of neutral space that maybe, I don't want to say limbo, but null space, I guess, between the negative and the positive. You're on the path, but you haven't moved forward. Well, you have if you've come from negative. You've moved forward, but you haven't got to that positive space yet.
And sometimes we just can't say because we don't have the belief. And affirmations are something that they don't require belief to work, but they require belief to employ. We are trapped by our beliefs, and so many things in our life. I remember in a business I was in years ago, and a person was interested in the business, in learning from me how they could make the business, but they were not interested in the products that were in that business. And they said, believing what they were saying, I don't believe in those products. And we were talking about a million, multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars business that existed already. What does it matter if you believe in those products? Obviously, some people do because they're being consumed. So, does the guy who owns the local grocery store, does he believe in all the products on his shelf, or does he carry the products that his customers want? And so, you have to sometimes separate your own beliefs. Now, moralities, and I'm not going to do that because I don't believe, that's for the good of mankind, whatever sort of thing. Okay, those are fine. But sometimes when it comes down to the specifics, the nitty-gritties, you have to not get trapped by your beliefs, especially when they have nothing whatsoever to do with what you're doing. And affirmations are kind of like that. You don't have to believe in affirmations, you simply have to do them. And that's the hard part, is coming to the understanding, not the belief, but the understanding that if you do them, and you do them correctly, and you do them often enough and with habit, they will work.
I wanted to pull in. Go ahead, Gerald.
Feel that this all stems from believing in yourself is the key to success. So pretty much you've got to remember that the affirmations are pretty much navigating you towards where you want to get to. And we do have to remember that the subconscious mind is a tool. Yes, I know it's a very, very powerful tool, but it doesn't control us. We still have the power over it. Remember like that we are the captain. And like Shelly Ann had said, a lot of this belief in impossible, it's that belief, I'm possible. Looking at the words again that we're using for the affirmation, is supposed to be impossible. And not being trapped, like Steve said about not letting our beliefs trap us. That's where the persistence in making a habit of repeating these positive affirmations until the subconscious mind does belief. Keep drip feeding it, spoon feeding it, as Steve said, until it does what it's told to do. Because that's what it's all about, and it's all this self-belief, and I can, and pretty much thinking for ourselves and what we want for ourselves. Going back to I'll just repeat it again because Shelly Ann wasn't there when I read it before we get started, but life is the movie you see through your own eyes. It makes little difference what's happening out there. It's how you take it that counts. So pretty much it's up to you how you perceive what you see. And I think affirmations is just pretty much like planning ahead, being prepared. Like the elevator pitch we've spoke about before, Steve. It's like, if you're not prepared, how are you doing? I hadn't thought about it before. It's preparation. Where are you going? It's not been in that neutral, and it's not been, and it's knowing not to be in the negative. So it's moving forward, where are you going? And it's
and we have to be careful what we say. For many years, I struggled with reaching forward, with thinking forward, with planning forward, with setting smart goals, getting things out there. And I realized that I was sabotaging myself, because when people asked me how I was doing, I would always say, well, I'm doing fine. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable where I am. And you know what? I stayed where I was. My subconscious was very happy to keep me comfortable. And I was. I did okay, but I didn't move ahead. I didn't succeed. I wasn't on the journey of success.
Affirmations, we've talked a lot about the internal piece here, but they not only affect the way you see yourself, they'll impact the way that other people see you. So when you hold your head up high and you walk with purpose, other people will gravitate towards your energy flow. In fact, being in a state of flow is the best place you can get things done. When you're feeling your authentic self and your energy, you are your most creative mind, and you can achieve the goals that you set for yourself. Something Steve said earlier, I can't remember what it was, but I just wanted to talk a bit about, how else affirmations can affect us, not just the specific things that the affirmations are about, but when you have that stronger sense of self and you're using affirmations and focusing on your values and strengthening your sense of self-worth, then other threatening situations that happen around you might not affect you so negatively because you've prepared your mind ahead of time. You're strengthening who you are. You're strengthening what you believe about yourself. I want to give a silly little example. Something called fat calling, which is just a seedier form of cat calling. When I visit my sister in Brantford, it's a small town or smaller town, and I have on several occasions had people do drive-by cat calling where they shout something at me about being fat, and I am fat, so that's okay to me. But 20 years ago, when I wasn't working with values and journaling and gratitude and affirmations and all these things in my life that have helped me, that would have upset me a lot. And if it happens to somebody who hasn't been building their self-worth, it can be embarrassing, it can be devastating. But because of the work that I'm doing, because of the strengthening that I've done with things like affirmations, to me, they may as well have just been saying, hey, I see you. It didn't upset me at all. And those are the kinds of little things that happen around our life that happen on the daily, on the weekly, where, something might be an affront and it might stop you. It might halt you completely. But by working through gratitude and working through habits and working through affirmations, you strengthen that core of who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's a great example. It may be an isolated small example, but it is exemplar of things that happen a lot. And our peers can be, the most difficult dealing with. And we talked about communication before, and we sometimes say things that we don't pause to think about how they affect people. But I remember as a young kid, playing with friends, they could be taunting and hurtful, and they were our friends. We went back and played with them, and yet if something happened in that moment, they could, give you a hard time about it, give you some grief. And my grandmother taught me the saying, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. It's been around forever. And I don't know if kids are using it today or not, but it certainly is a good phrase. And it was the beginnings of my whole journey into affirmations and self-understanding. And later on, I learned from a mentor when I was in business professionally, and I had mentors and guides and coaches. And I strongly emphasize that anybody watching this today or in replay, if you are a coach especially, but if you're in business and if you're online especially, because you're dealing with a huge market potential, you really should have a coach. And that's not to say you should hire one of the four of us, and we're here and we're available, but you need to find a coach that fits with what you're doing. And I think that's very, very important that everybody does. And I've had coaches and mentors all through my life, all through my professional life, and gained so much from them. And one of them shared with me the idea that the word fear, because that's what we're talking about. When you were bothered by people saying you're fat, you feared what that meant. Later on, you came to terms with that and wrestled that fear to the ground, and your approach changed. And he shared the word fear with me as an acronym, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. And you say, well, what do you mean false evidence? Well, the fact is that the things that we worry about, the things that we fear happening, in our lives that we think are bad, about 97% of them actually never happen. Never happen. We worry, we fret. Well, what's going to be? Oh, Monday's going to be, I don't know. And then they don't happen. And if you think back on it, you realize that the reason you're alive and you're successful and you're still here and you're pumping along is because all that crap that you worried about never happened. False evidence appearing real. And of the 3% that does happen, the vast majority of them turn out okay. They're not bad. It's only a fraction of 1% of the things we fear that actually go wrong. And if we're prepared to cope with them, right? If we fear walking down the street when we're fat because somebody's going to fat call us as they drive by, if we fear that and it happens, the fear comes true and it's bad. If we're prepared for it, if we've set our mental capacity, our approach to things in the right vein, it doesn't hurt us. We deal with it. We deal with it even without thinking. That's the power. That's as Gerald says, we're the captain. We're in control. We choose the path we take. And affirmations are just a tool, one more tool in our toolkit of multiple tools that we have available, but a very powerful tool that lets us focus on key elements of who we are, and what we want to be.
So I want to ask a question. And it has to do with something Cass said and what you just said, Steve. Affirmations being a tool, and Cass mentioned a few other things, journaling and the gratitudes and, different things that were done. Where does affirmations fit? Where do they fit in terms of moving from where you don't want to be to where you want to be? Because I read there was actually, I think I closed it off, but someone mentioned a study that said people who have low self-esteem using affirmations doesn't work for them. And there was an actual study done that this is what they're claiming. So I'm wondering, where do you begin? How do affirmations work within this whole context?
Could I answer that one?
Oh yes, sure. Everybody, please. I'm curious. I have my own thoughts, but I would love to hear what everybody else says.
Well, pretty much, like I mentioned, preparation and preparing ourselves, and then Cass mentioned the word preparation, and Steve mentioned the word preparation. Pretty much, it's preparing ourselves. It's like charting our course. It's like thinking about what we want, and the same as like what we're saying in affirmations. It's not what we don't want. It's the words that we use. So it's thinking about what you want and keeping your eyes ahead. That's the same. Whereas they say the screen in the car is a big screen so that you can see ahead, whereas it's a small one back. If you're looking behind you, you're going to crash. Where are you going, and being prepared to seize the opportunity every time. So you're thinking ahead all the time. You're grateful for where you are, but you could stay where you are and be safe. But then again, no, there's risks got to be involved in success. But then again, if you think about the best way to get there and chart the course confidently, here's one here. It says our goals are to expand our thinking and to go beyond what was to what might be. So it's evolution. And the same as Einstein's always saying, it's imagination's more important than knowledge. Knowledge is what you see all around about you. Somebody's created that. But it's all about this self-belief and building your confidence and setting goals and creating a better world.
Yeah, I want to pull on a thread that Steve had said, and I think we've all sort of touched on, that it's important to remember that affirmations are just one tool in our toolkit. It wasn't affirmations alone that got me from where I was 20 years ago. It was, like I said, mindfulness, mindset, attention management, journaling, gratitude. There are so many pieces that make up the puzzle of my own self-worth and self-esteem. But these are like the stones building my foundation. And it's from and with these tools that I'm able to build my dreams, to be able to share them with you, to work with my clients. Affirmations are powerful, but not in a silo. So I don't know how that study was carried out, but you need to use them with other parts of your journey, right? Are you doing morning pages as a practice, which I've started doing now because of my mentor? Are you following a workbook? Are you working with a mentor? And most importantly, something I think we've all touched on too is consistently working towards your goals. In fact, I floated that consistency might be a good topic for next week, just how important it is to be, building habits, doing routines, consistently working forward.
Yeah, I think consistency is awesome, considering in addition to the fact that it underlies everything, habit coach here, um, it we're going into a new year, and against all odds and all the research, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to be making all kinds of New Year's resolutions. And statistics continue to say that by the end of February, at least I think it's like about 60% of them are no longer, I think the figure might even be higher, working on it. And so consistency really is the key. And there are strategies for consistency. We don't just get up and say, "Oh, I'm going to be consistent today." What are we doing? What are we putting into place? What are our systems? How have we managed our environment to create the consistency? So I think it's an awesome topic. And then quickly, I know Stephen, you want to say something, but something Gerald said brought a quotation to mind. Um, Ships in harbor are safe, but that's not what ships are for. I don't know if you've heard that saying before, but that we're meant to explore, we're meant to experience and enjoy life. The ups, the downs, the sideways, the backwards, forwards. That there are moments when it's not pleasant, but overall there is still meant to be joy in the whole process of going after what we're going for. And so I want to hear Steve's comment before I make when I read that. My first thought, like you, Cass, was who did this study? What exactly did they study? But I haven't gotten chance to read the entire research document. I just read the abstract, and I thought the article that put me onto that study mentioned that people don't apply affirmations effectively and they're doing it wrong, which is why you end up with that kind of thing. So it's not the tool itself, but it's the process. So I'm wondering, there's a whole lot to go on about that, but go ahead, Steve.
So many things come out of that. First of all, with the ship in the harbor, think about the ship in the harbor. It doesn't just sit in the harbor and then one day go out into the ocean. While it's in the harbor, it unloads what it brought with it. It loads up the stuff it's going to take with it. It cleans up the environment. The sailors are busy cleaning the decks and other things. They repair things that broke on the last trip, and they get new supplies and so on. And then they go out on the ocean. They get ready. They do their homework. They check the charts for where they're going if it's a different route than they have gone on before. And so there is a process of getting ready to go on the sailing. It's not just the harbor as a thing. And we have to understand that with ourselves. And as coaches, we have to understand that with our clients, that we have to help them prepare to go out on the ocean. They don't just go out on the ocean and then figure it out. That particular study, the very fact that it had a word slipped there, intro to it. You said you read the
Abstract.
Thank you. The getting old, happens. But the very fact that it had an abstract says that it's probably worth reading the rest of it. But this happens a lot in studies, is that they study the item as a tool, but they don't study the application of it well. And if you think of a hammer, just a common claw hammer that everybody has probably seen and probably has at least one in their home, The hammer has a round end on it, and then it has the body to the head, and it tails off to the claw on the other side, which is used for pulling nails. And you use the handle as a lever when you do that. You're actually using the handle as a lever when you're banging nails too, because you're swinging it down, which causes the head to move in an arc with the handle as the lever, and so it adds force to it to drive the nails. And it has a way to be used, and there's a number of intricate things about the design of a hammer. And if you notice, the handle of the hammer is fairly narrow where it joins the hammer. It gets a little bit larger out towards the end. And there's, the narrowness is enough. It is what it needs to do, whether it's a metal handle or a wooden handle or a composite or plastic or nylon handle. They tend to have the same kind of shape and structure. And the narrowness is enough. It's enough to hold the head and deal with the blows and so on. And the phrase adequate is enough kind of applies here. Making it larger or having a rubber pad on it is for grip. It's to fit your hand. It's to have something. If the whole handle was as narrow as it is near the top end, you wouldn't be able to hang on to it as easily. It would slip in your hand. So there's design purposes for that handle, that handle. And the fact, if you look at it, it is narrow side to side in the direction the hammer is used. And if you turn the hammer on its side, it is wider but thinner the other way. And again, it has to do with adequacy or enough. You only want to use as much material as you need. So you need to make the hammer thicker, the handle thicker through the direction of use, so that the blow to the nail or the leverage to pull the nail has the strength. But if you turn the handle to the side, turn the hammer to the side, you could perfectly well use the side of the body of the hammer to drive in a nail. But especially on an older type of hammer with the wooden handles, as you banged away with it, you're liable to snap that handle because that's the thinner direction. By not using it the way it's designed, you can readily cause damage to it. And we need to keep that in mind as we deploy tools that we have, including affirmations. We need to use them as they're designed if we want them to be effective. But one last thing, Shelley Ann, you were really asking in your question sort of where in the timeline of growth or working with a client, depending on which way you're looking at it, personal growth from our point of view, the client from the coach's point of view, where does affirmation fit in? And I would say that maybe the timeline is the wrong way to look at it. It's more of a spectrum. And the light shines upon us or upon the client with the full spectrum. And then we draw from it as is needed at the moment. And that's where having a coach is. I have a coach, and I have two coaches right now. And I draw so much from them because the spectrum is all around me. I know most of this stuff. It's funny how sometimes the coach will share something with me that I taught to a client 6 months ago or a year ago. I know I can teach, and yet hearing it again in the moment where it's needed does something for me, motivates me, gets me going on the right path, changes my sense of direction a little bit to be more on target. And so, we all, at whatever level we're at, just starting out and struggling, in the middle of a struggle, at the end of a struggle, doesn't matter. We all have the possibility and the need for a coach and a mentor. And we may even find that they can share something that boosts our ability that they're not even doing themselves, or that they may even be failing at themselves, but they can bring it to our attention in a way that we can grasp it and work with it. And affirmations, just one more good tool. It is up to a good coach to understand their client, where they are, what their vector is, what their sense of direction is, where they're going. And that may only be tomorrow, or it may be next month, or it may be next year. It may be their whole life's goal. And it's up to the coach, the mentor, the guide to determine that and get them on the right path and work with them going forward and bring in the tools that are supportive at that moment. And affirmations may not be one of them. They're not good for everybody all of the time. And the study that you're referring to, Shelley-Ann, may indeed have looked at people who weren't ready for affirmations. Of course they won't work. They may not have learned yet and understood the right kind of affirmations. Did that study direct those people with a list of affirmations, and did they ensure that they used them correctly? Had they been taught? That's the coach's responsibility to teach. I've often said that teachers, regular, school teachers, fail when they fail to teach. They call them teachers because that's what they do. This idea of letting students learn on their own, yes, that's a valuable teaching tool, but it's not the only teaching tool. And so we have to teach certain things. We have to lay foundations. We have to lay examples and steps before those people. And coaches, in essence, are teachers. My thoughts, anyway, my 2 cents, or
Yeah.
$1.50.
And when or $2. Um,
Yeah.
when you spoke about teachers, one of the things that I do is to train teachers. I'm also a creative writing specialist, and I train teachers in how to teach creative writing, because it's not automatic and it's not something that is actively taught at university when they learn teacher training, when they do their workshops and so on. And what I always stress is that placement of, students learning on their own. It's useful, but where do you put it? So we begin with teacher led, then we go to student interaction, and then we go to independent. And so we don't begin with independent with a topic that the student has never heard of before. And so that's something that I think about with affirmations, as well as we're having the conversation, as well as what are affirmations created for? What do we use them for? Because you mentioned, Steve, with the analogy with the hammer, we use the hammer in a particular way for a particular purpose. So then, what is the reason for affirmations? What is the purpose?
I think that's a good point. Whereas I'll jump in here because it's more like we've been discussing how to apply affirmations. And I think every one of us is going to apply them differently. It could be wrong, it could be right. You might not know that you're damaging yourself, you're using them wrong. It's pretty much understanding, the fundamental of the affirmation and thinking, how can this work for me? Not how it works for other people. And then it's great, like how, like your example, and then Steve followed on to that one about the ship it wasn't built to sit in the harbour, but also you've got to follow on for that one is like you've got to risk losing sight of the shore, like to explore and discover and have more from life. So there is certain risks, but it's all about limiting those risks with self-belief, because are you worth it? Like more than what you've got. You're grateful for what you've got, but do you want more? So it's all self-talk. That's what affirmations is.
Yeah, and for me, that is one of the purposes, and I say one of because, like you said, how is it going to work for this particular situation? And as Steve said, that is where your coach comes in to give you that guidance and to explore with you to see what works and what doesn't, so that you can adjust and manage and, adopt what is going to get you what it is you desire. And so for me, in general, affirmations are part of the conversation. And so if, for example, someone who's working on self-love uses the phrase, since I've mentioned, I am beautiful, and they don't believe that, then and they're using that affirmation when they say I am beautiful, and the subconscious comes back with, "Pfft, are you sure?" you know you can say yes, and there's a conversation. And so it's not as if we're dropping these statements, as Cass said, it's not a silo, and it's in combination with other things. And so we're not dropping a statement of affirmation and running. We're beginning a conversation so that we can get to the heart of whatever the belief is and address it, and work on what would be more beneficial to replace it with. But we need to have that conversation. And sometimes the affirmation is just the beginning of the conversation.
One of the things I would say is that affirmations build resiliency. They give you that strength that you need to move forward. And I just wanted to share. You just cued a memory for me. I am beautiful. It was one of my affirmations very early on. It was something that I was working with a group with, and I am beautiful probably wouldn't have been an appropriate affirmation if I was working with somebody who I knew now. But at the time, I wrote it on my mirror. And for the first week, it felt really strange. Every time I looked in the mirror and I saw it said, I am beautiful. Because in my head, I was separate from what I was seeing in the mirror. And so when I took that affirmation and I said, I am beautiful, and so are you, now I covered both sides, myself and the reflection in the mirror. And I was able to start manifesting that differently, because it wasn't something that was outside of myself. It was me too. So it depends on how it's going to work for you, like Gerald says.
Yeah.
That was a great example of how you took that and you used it for what worked for you. That was a great example by adding
And it
that.
started the conversation.
Yeah, which was two-way.
Yeah.
Both of you referred to things, though, that I think are interesting from my perspective. What I've seen in the understanding of the subconscious. Affirmations cannot work without the subconscious, but understanding the subconscious is another whole thing, and we could maybe talk about that in another session as well. But just quickly here, Shelley Ann, the subconscious would never say, that's not true. You don't communicate with your subconscious that way. That's your conscious mind speaking back to you. That's the id that you've built over time that is speaking back to you, scoffing at you. And you don't have it under control yet. But the subconscious isn't doing that. So but that's powerful. That is a affirmation.
And it's the knowledge of that. And that's the thing. That's where the conversation comes in, because most people aren't aware of that.
Yeah, the conversation is so important. The conversation, Gerald has referred to self-talk. Our conversation with our mind, with our consciousness, not our subconscious. We don't have conversations with our subconscious in that way. But that is so important to making, or to allowing, not making, but allowing affirmations to work with the subconscious. And Cass, what you did with that, I am beautiful, and so are you. The so are you part was for you, for your consciousness, not for your subconscious, because it would not actually take anything in from that, because there was no positive statement there that it could grasp on. If you wanted it to be a double affirmation, you would say, I am beautiful, you are beautiful, or you are beautiful too. The two would be ignored by the subconscious, but it would get the part that's there. These are subtle little differences, and what you did worked because you were not only talking to your subconscious, both ways. Since the mirror image is an illusion, you only had to do it one way, but in your conscious mind, you felt the need to do it both ways. So you answered your conscious mind with what you wrote, but your subconscious mind got it perfectly because of the one. And it would have doubly got it if you had written, you are beautiful. I am beautiful, you are beautiful. It would work.
On that note, I have to take off. I'm so sorry. It's noon, but please wrap up how you're going to wrap up, and I will see you next week.
Glad to have you with us. Thank you for sharing so much.
Yeah, it is time to wrap up
It
as
is time to
well. I
wrap
do
up.
have
Where did
to
the
go.
time
Yeah.
go? Let's just leave it there since we're at the time. We've done our hour, and we've covered so much. Folks, I for the people listening to this live or in replay, it's in replay in several places. I hope you got some value of this. And if you're using affirmations, but you're not sure, speak to one of us. All four of us use them and know how to use them, and speak to one of us, whichever one you feel comfortable with. And if you're not using them, speak to one of us. We'll help you get started using them correctly. It's so important. They're so simple, so basic, and yet so powerful.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be here next week. Shelley Ann, cue the music.
Bye, everybody.